Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It happened during a summer party in our backyard. Austin heat lingering in the air, the kind that clings to your skin and makes the drinks go down too easy. The place was buzzing with music and laughter. People I'd known for years, my friends, my coworkers, stood around sipping beers and swapping embarrassing college stories like we were 21 again. I just stepped away from the grill when I heard Natalie's voice carry over the music. "All the men in this room tasted me," she said, laughing loud and sloppy, like it was the punchline of some twisted joke. The whole backyard went silent. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Dan's beer bottle paused at his lips. Tyler and Ben, the two guys I'd pulled into my company back when it was just a garage startup, looked like they'd seen a ghost. The kind of ghost that knows all your secrets. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, staring at her from across the patio with the spatula still in my hand. Then I said it, clear and calm enough that every guest could hear me. "It'll help during the divorce." Natalie's smile cracked like glass. Her cheeks flushed, but it wasn't from the wine anymore. "Scott." "No. Wait." She stumbled forward, trying to force a laugh. "Come on, I was joking." "It was a joke." "God, can't you take a joke?" I didn't say a word. I just kept staring at her like I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She kept rambling, desperate now. "You know I didn't mean that. It was before us, before anything serious." I thought, "Natalie," I cut in, voice low. "Don't." Dan stepped toward me, trying to find solid ground in a suddenly sinking world. "Man, she's just had a bit too much. She didn't mean it." I turned to him. "Did you?" He looked down. That silence told me everything. "You too, Tyler?" I asked, my voice still level. Tyler didn't even try to deny it. "It was years ago, man. Before you guys got married." Ben whispered, "It was one time. I didn't know you two were." I didn't care for the excuses. I just pointed to the gate. "Get out." Dan opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't budge. "Out of my house. Now." The three of them shuffled past the stunned guests. The laughter was gone now, replaced by a silence that pressed against everyone like Texas humidity. Natalie followed after them, gripping my arm. "Scott, please, don't do this. We can talk." I pulled my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about." As they disappeared into the street, I finally glanced around the backyard. People avoided my gaze. The party was over, even if the music was still playing. I owned the company. I signed their paychecks. I thought I knew my wife. I thought I knew my friends. Turns out, I didn't know anything at all. And that night, that was just the first crack in the mirror I'd been staring into for years. The house was quiet now, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that holds a pulse, an echo of what just happened still trembling in the walls. I walked upstairs slowly, each step heavier than the last, like I was dragging every broken piece of tonight with me. Natalie was already in the bedroom. Her heels were off, hair a mess, mascara smudged from tears she'd started halfway through her fourth attempt at damage control. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers knotted together like a child waiting to be scolded. "Scott." Her voice cracked like she hadn't used it in days. I shut the door gently behind me. "Don't. Please just let me explain," she said, standing too fast, her balance still off from the wine. Or maybe just the shame. "I think we covered everything out there," I said, taking off my watch and setting it on the dresser like it was any other night. Like my world hadn't just split open in front of 30 people. She stepped closer, eyes wet. "It was before you. It was all before us. I was young and stupid and curious. That's all it was. You seriously think I'm the only one who made mistakes before we got married?" I looked at her for a long time before speaking. "Mistakes are one thing," I said. "Sleeping with 3 of my closest friends, and then blurting it out in my backyard while they drink my beer? That's not a mistake. That's betrayal with volume." Her lip trembled. "You think I planned that? You think I wanted to humiliate you?" "You didn't just humiliate me," I said. "You lit a match under everything we built. And you smiled while doing it." "I was drunk," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "God, Scott, how perfect have you been, huh? Never done anything reckless? Never had a past?" "Sure," I nodded. "But I didn't invite it into our home. And I didn't toast it in front of a crowd." She started crying again, and this time it wasn't the dramatic kind. It was quiet. The kind that made your throat tighten just listening to it. But I stayed still, watching. "I didn't think it mattered," she whispered. "It was years ago. I didn't even know you then." "But I know them now," I said coldly. They were part of our life. You let them into our house, into my company, into our wedding, while carrying a secret like that. She dropped to her knees, hands covering her face. I thought it'd stay buried. I swear. I thought I could just be normal. Just be your wife and forget everything else. I sat on the edge of the bed and picked up my phone. What are you doing? She asked, standing quickly, voice sharp with panic. Calling Luke. No. Her eyes widened. Please. Not him. Don't bring him into this. He's your brother, I said, and the only person who might help you pack tonight. She lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. Scott, please. Don't do this. You're overreacting. This doesn't have to go nuclear. I stood. You already detonated it, Natalie. I'm just cleaning up the fallout. I can't stay with Luke, she said, shaking her head. You know how he is. He'll never forgive me. He'll never even look at me the same again. Then maybe you shouldn't have made it so easy for him to look at you different, I replied. She slapped the phone out of my hand. It hit the carpet and slid under the bed. For a second, we both just stood there, frozen, staring at each other. No sound but our breathing and the distant hum of the ceiling fan. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. If you call him, that's it. It's over. It was over, I said, the moment you turned our marriage into a party trick. She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into the sheets like they could somehow take her side. I knelt down, grabbed the phone from under the bed, and scrolled to Luke's number. I hit call. Natalie screamed into the pillow. Outside, the summer night kept pretending it was normal. Crickets chirped. A breeze rustled the trees. But in that bedroom, winter had already set in. I stood at the edge of the porch, arms crossed, watching the driveway like it owed me answers. The porch light above me buzzed faintly, casting a harsh glow that made everything feel colder than it should have been for a Texas night. The sound of Luke's truck rolled in slowly, low, steady, and certain. Same as him. He always had this quiet weight to him, the kind that didn't make a fuss but made people listen when he finally spoke. He parked, engine idling for a moment before shutting it off. Then he stepped out, tall, solid, wearing an old flannel and jeans like he was walking in from a different decade. Scott, he said, nodding once as he stepped up the drive. I nodded back. Luke. He looked past me, toward the front door. She said it was urgent. I didn't answer right away. I looked him square in the eye and said, she told a crowd of our friends tonight that every man in that yard had been with her. She thought it was funny. His jaw tightened. She was drinking, I added. But the slurring didn't make it any less true. He stood there, silent as stone, absorbing it like a man getting hit by slow-moving thunder. And they didn't deny it? He asked, voice low. I shook my head. Not a word. Luke didn't react, not outwardly. But I saw it. The shift in his shoulders. The way he exhaled slowly, like trying to blow steam off a boiling pot that was already too full. Then the door behind me creaked open. Natalie stepped out, barefoot, her face blotchy and wet. She looked so small in the porch light. Just a mess of old tears and bad decisions. Luke, she whimpered, stepping down toward him. He looked at her without blinking. Get your things. Her mouth opened like she wanted to explain, to plead, but no words came out. She turned to me instead. Scott, please. Just give me a day. Let me stay. We'll talk in the morning. Just don't make me go tonight. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her hand as it reached for mine. She grabbed it. Tight, both palms wrapping around like she was holding on for life. Please, she whispered, eyes searching mine like she still had time to rewrite this story. But I pulled away. She gasped, like I'd yanked the last piece of oxygen from the night. I don't even know where I'm going, she said, turning back to Luke, who hadn't moved an inch. You're going with me, he said simply. She froze. You hate me right now? I don't hate you, he replied. But I don't trust you either. Let's go. She stood there trembling, then turned slowly and went back inside. A few minutes later, she came out with a bag so poorly packed it still had a hanger sticking out the top. She didn't look at me again. Luke opened the passenger side. She climbed in slowly, like someone walking into a cell of their own making. He got behind the wheel and turned the key. The truck stuttered, choked. Natalie flinched. It stalled once, then caught on the second try with a growl. She was crying again, quiet now, just hiccuping sobs muffled by the closed windows. I watched them pull away into the dark, the red taillights flashing weakly against the pavement like the last signal of something leaving for good. And then silence. No more porch light buzz. No more voices. Just me, and the sound of the wind picking up through the trees. I didn't go inside right away. I just stood there in the doorway of what used to be a shared life, wondering when exactly it stopped feeling like home. Monday morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight over the skyline, coffee brewing, elevators humming up 20 floors. But in my chest, there was no reset button. The weekend's poison still burned, and today, it needed a place to go. I stood at the tall windows of my office overlooking downtown Austin. Sleek, polished floors. Framed blueprints from our early projects. Every square inch of this place was built with trust. So I called them in. Dan, Tyler, and Ben filed in one by one, all looking unsure, but trying to play it cool. Dan carried that usual smirk like he thought charm could smooth anything over. Tyler was fidgeting with his watch. Ben avoided my eyes. Close the door, I said, without turning from the glass. Dan did it, then chuckled softly. Didn't know we were doing a boardroom execution. I finally turned to face them. No jokes, I said flatly. Not today. They sat, uneasy now. The silence stretched just long enough. You all know why you're here, I began. I built this company on something bigger than contracts and margins. I built it with people I believed in. People I trusted. Tyler shifted. Scott, what happened was a long time ago, and that's your defense. I cut in. You slept with my wife, before we were married, then stood beside me at the altar, ate at my table, took jobs here under my roof. And not once did any of you think to say a word? Ben rubbed his face. We didn't think it mattered anymore. She never said we were exclusive. None of us knew you were serious until way later. I proposed after 6 months, I said coldly. You were all there. Gave the toasts, handed me the ring when I couldn't find it. You knew. Dan raised his eyebrows. Scott, man, I get that you're upset. Upset. I took a step closer. No, I'm done being upset. I'm done giving grace to people who weaponized my loyalty. I grabbed a file off my desk and dropped it in front of them. Inside were 3 resignation forms. Sign them, I said. Tyler scoffed. You can't be serious. I'm giving you a choice, I said. Resign, and I'll keep your names clean. No public record. No black marks. Or I terminate you for cause. Ben looked up, jaw tight. That's extreme. What happened with Natalie doesn't affect our work. Dan leaned forward, voice low. You're throwing away years of teamwork over something that happened before you two were even a thing. I didn't blink. If it were just about her, maybe. But it's about all the moments since. The lies by omission. The dinners. The board meetings. You made me the punchline of my own life and kept cashing the checks. They went silent. Then Tyler spoke, voice quiet. You're not going to let this go, are you? No, I said. I'm not. Dan leaned back, defeated. Then it's termination, huh? I didn't answer. I just reached into the drawer and pulled out the pre-written termination notices. I laid them beside the unsigned resignations. Last chance. No one moved. So I collected the resignations, slid them aside, and handed over the pink slips. The room went cold. They stood one by one, the rustle of jackets the only sound in the silence. Ben looked at me like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Tyler clenched his jaw and walked out. Dan paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said, she pursued us. I met his eyes. And you followed. He left. I sat down, the room finally empty, the silence welcome this time. I hadn't won anything, but I cleaned the rot. 3 days passed. Quiet days, but not peaceful. No calls, no texts, just absence. The kind that hums through a house like feedback in a speaker, subtle but sharp. I came home late Thursday, grocery bag in one hand, mail in the other. I barely noticed the envelope at first, tucked between a hardware store flyer and a water bill. No return address. Legal thickness. I tore it open at the kitchen counter. Court summons. Wrongful termination. Filed jointly by Daniel M. Creed, Tyler B. McKenna, and Benjamin C. Shaw. I stood there, staring at the page, reading it twice, then once more. My breath didn't change. My heartbeat didn't race. But something in my jaw tightened hard. They really did it. They'd taken what little honor they had left and traded it for a last payday. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of worry. Just disappointment so thick it kept my mind awake. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Dan was always the ringleader. If I was going to say something, I'd say it to him. Direct. That evening, I parked on the side of a narrow cul-de-sac in South Austin. Dan's truck was out front, the same one we loaded furniture into when we moved into our first office suite. Now it just looked like rusting memory. I walked up and knocked, 3 solid times. He opened the door like he wasn't surprised. "Scott," he said, almost with a sigh. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Lawsuit showed up today," I said. Dan stepped aside slightly, not really an invite, more like a nervous twitch. "Yeah, I figured." "So you figured betrayal wasn't enough?" I said. "Now you want money too." He shut the door gently behind me. "It's not about the money. You're suing me for over $500,000, I said flatly. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "It's about fairness. You fired us over personal history, stuff that had nothing to do with performance. That's illegal, Scott. We talked to a lawyer." "Fairness." I laughed once. "Cold. You had a decade to be fair. A decade to say something, anything. You stood beside me at my wedding. You gave a speech." His eyes dropped to the floor. "I didn't think it would blow up like this." "No, you didn't think I'd ever find out." He looked up, jaw tightening. "You're angry. I get it. But dragging us through the mud professionally because of what happened with Natalie. Stop saying her name like she's a shield," I snapped. "You slept with her. Multiple times, apparently. Then smiled in my face for 10 years. It was before you were together," he muttered, like a kid caught lying again and hoping the teacher would just move on. "Dan, this wasn't high school gossip. You were my inner circle. You betrayed me. And now, instead of taking your shame and walking away quietly, you want to sue me like I wronged you." Dan stepped closer, arms folded. "You made it personal. You humiliated us. You think no one's going to fight back?" "No," I said. "I think you already lost the second you stopped being a man about it." That hit him. I saw it. His chin lifted, barely. "You're bitter," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I'm clean." I turned, walked down the porch steps. "Scott," he called out. "We didn't want it to get like this." I looked back once, the setting sun casting long, sharp shadows behind him. "Neither did I. But you made your choice. Now you'll deal with mine." I got in the car, shut the door, and drove away, leaving him standing there, half-lit in orange glow, looking more like a stranger than someone I'd once trusted with everything. It was just after 9 when my phone lit up. I was on the back patio, feet up, bourbon in hand. The city buzzed faintly in the distance, muffled laughter, tires on pavement, Austin's usual hum. But my place felt still. Finally, the name on the screen pulled a sigh from my chest. "Natalie." I let it ring almost to the end before answering. "What?" I said. Her voice came sharp. Too sharp to be tired. "You blew it all up, Scott." I didn't move. "You call me to say that. You didn't have to humiliate them. You didn't have to fire them. You didn't have to make this public. They humiliated themselves," I said evenly. I just stopped protecting the lie. There was a long silence. Then her voice dropped, lower now. "You think this makes you noble? Think you're the only one who got hurt?" I stared out into the yard, the porch light behind me barely pushing past the grass line. "I know I'm not," I replied. "But I'm the one who didn't lie to a room full of friends and call it a joke." She exhaled like she was trying to calm herself, but her tone sharpened again. "You could have kept this between us. A real man would have." "A real man." I chuckled softly. "Tell me, Nat, how does a real man react when he finds out his wife treated his friends like a tasting menu?" She gasped, just for a second, like I'd crossed a line. But she recovered quickly. "You always twist everything," she said bitterly. "It was before us. It was never just about the timing," I said. "It was about the years you looked me in the eye and let me believe they were my brothers, that you were mine." "You're punishing me," she hissed. "You want me ruined." "I want you gone," I said calmly. "There's a difference." She fell quiet. I waited. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you even miss me?" I took a sip of the bourbon. The ice had mostly melted. "I miss the version of you I thought was real," I said. "But you? This version? The one who gaslit me and now wants pity? No, I don't miss that at all." She was crying now, but it was quiet. No theatrics. Just breath catching on the line. "You know what hurts the most?" she said through the tears. "You used to be kind." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "You need a man who tolerates betrayal, who forgives lies. That's not me. Never was." The line stayed open for another moment, just the sound of her breath, soft and ragged. "Goodbye, Natalie," I said. I ended the call. The phone sat face down on the table. Above me, the wind rustled the leaves just enough to break the silence. And for the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest didn't feel heavy. It felt like something had finally lifted. Not peace, but something close enough. Still here? Give this video a like, it really helps. The next morning, I walked into Crane and Bishop Legal, folder tucked under my arm, mood somewhere between resigned and ready for war. Reception offered the usual smile, but I wasn't in the mood for it. I nodded and headed straight toward the elevator. The firm had represented my business for years, contracts, acquisitions, the occasional trade dispute. But this was the first time I walked in asking for something personal, and I wasn't exactly thrilled about it. When I stepped into the conference room, it was quiet. Too quiet. No papers spread out, no senior partner waiting at the table. Just one person sitting at the end with a nervous smile, trying to look composed. She couldn't have been more than 25. "Mr. Kinley," she said, standing quickly and smoothing her blouse. "Elise Ward," she added. "I'm your assigned attorney on the case." I stopped mid-step. "You're the attorney?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir. I graduated from." I held up a hand. "You look like you should be shadowing someone, not leading this." Her face faltered. It was like I'd knocked the wind out of her with a single sentence. I was told I'd be taking point on this since I specialized in employment law and too young." I muttered, not even meaning to say it aloud. Just a thought that slipped out as frustration. I saw it land. Her smile dropped completely. Her lips pressed together like she was trying to hold herself steady. Then the door opened again. Roger Crane, the firm's co-founder and my longtime legal contact, stepped in. "Morning, Scott," he said with a friendly pat on my shoulder. "You met Elise?" I didn't take my eyes off her. I thought I'd be working with someone more experienced. Roger chuckled lightly, then moved to the head of the table. "Elise graduated top of her class. Yale. She's sharp, focused, and, most importantly, has zero personal history clouding her judgment. You need that right now." I glanced back at her. She was flipping open a notebook now, pen trembling just slightly in her hand. Roger gave me a knowing look. Sometimes fresh eyes see the clearest. I sighed, slid into the chair across from her. "Fine. Let's hear what you've got." Elise blinked, then nodded quickly. "Okay." She took a breath and straightened her notes, the slight shake in her hands giving way to structure. "I've reviewed the employee agreements for Dan, Tyler, and Ben. Based on the clauses you had built into their contracts, particularly surrounding breach of fiduciary duty and reputational harm, you're in a stronger position than they think." Her voice was a little tight at first, but as she spoke, it smoothed out. Professional. Controlled. I also pulled the firm's internal ethics guidelines. If we can prove their silence actively undermined your leadership or impacted employee trust, that strengthens our case. She glanced up, almost waiting for me to interrupt again. I didn't. I just leaned back, arms crossed, watching her navigate her way through those first steps. Roger looked pleased. But Elise, she looked determined. And I could admit, she didn't fold. Not even when I tried to knock her off balance. The tension didn't disappear. But it shifted. She wasn't who I expected. And maybe that was exactly the point. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the room as Elise clicked her laptop closed and stood by the whiteboard. We'd been at it for over an hour. Her handwriting filled half the board already. Bullet points, dates, clauses. Legal precision dressed in blue marker ink. "And because you and Mrs. Kinley cohabitated for 3 years prior to your marriage," she said, underlining a section, "Texas recognizes a common law element in certain civil claims. That gives us leverage to argue that trust, both personal and professional, was a pre-existing, contractually implied obligation. It complicates their wrongful termination angle." I nodded. Or at least, I tried to. Truthfully, I hadn't heard a word she said since the last sentence about trust, because my eyes had drifted to a spot on the wall just above her shoulder. Not intentionally, not to be rude, just pulled there, like something inside me was rerouting my attention without asking permission. I was back in our old kitchen, Natalie barefoot on the tile, laughing at nothing while stirring pasta, wine glass tipping dangerously close to the edge of the counter. That soft light over her shoulders, the glow that made the room feel like a photo you'd keep forever. She'd laugh like she loved me. I remember that part clearly. Back then, Dan used to bring over that awful Merlot he liked. Tyler grilled. Ben played DJ. It was all effortless, like a life on autopilot and no turbulence in sight. Late-night talks in bed, baby names, tiny homes in Vermont, silly lists of where we'd retire someday. It's wild how real it all felt, how fragile it really was. I didn't notice Elise had stopped talking. Mr. Kinley? My eyes snapped back. She'd paused by the table now, her voice gentler than it had been all morning. You don't have to apologize, she said quickly. I know I just dropped a lot of law speak on you. I blinked. No, it's not you. She gave a small smile. Not forced. Just kind. You're not here because someone broke a contract, she said. You're here because someone broke you. I stiffened a little, not sure whether to nod or leave the room. She noticed. I only mean, she added, adjusting her notebook. I've seen this before. My internship supervisor went through a divorce while still mentoring me. I'd bring him case files, and he'd be staring at the floor. Every single time. I studied her for a beat. And he won, she said simply. But not because he out-argued anyone. He just stopped pretending he wasn't hurting. That caught me off guard. I leaned back in my chair. You talk like someone twice your age. She gave a small shrug. My mom says that too. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Elise returned to the whiteboard, circling 2 sections and muttering to herself as she worked. And for the first time since all of this started, Natalie's outburst, the firings, the lawsuit, I felt something unexpected settle in the room. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe something adjacent. Something like space to breathe. The courtroom was packed. A sea of stiff ties and stiff faces. The kind of place where every cough sounds criminal and every whispered note feels like betrayal. I sat at the plaintiff's table, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the polished wood in front of me. Not out of nerves, just to stay grounded. Because across the aisle sat Dan, Tyler, and Ben, neatly dressed in their best, were the victims' here faces. Their attorney looked smug. Probably thought this would be a slam dunk. 3 fired men with long tenure and no written misconduct. Natalie wasn't there. I didn't expect her to be, but part of me had still looked for her when I walked in. Elise stood beside me, flipping through her notes calmly. Focused. No fear in her expression. Just this quiet intensity, like someone who knew exactly what she was walking into. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge entered. Firm posture, silver hair, eyes sharp. We rose. Saturday. The other side went first. Their lawyer painted me as impulsive. Said I'd fired them without cause, out of personal bitterness. He referenced emails, performance reviews, even noted how I'd praised Dan in a staff-wide memo just 2 months prior. Then it was Elise's turn. She stood, adjusted her blazer once, then walked slowly to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, she began, her voice steady. This case is not about poor performance or impulsive management. It is about breach of trust, personal and professional, and the damage that breach caused within a workplace built on personal loyalty. She took a breath. Let's start with the foundation. Elise clicked the remote, and a screen behind her lit up with a timeline she'd built. Our cohabitation dates, company founding dates, employment dates, all lined up like threads crossing one another. Mr. Kinley and Natalie Fields began cohabitating in 2015. They married in 2018. The defendants were not just employees. They were groomsmen, lifelong friends. They were present at both personal milestones and professional building blocks. She turned back to the judge. What the defense wants to ignore is that their silence about past relationships wasn't just a private omission. It created a false dynamic within the workplace, a leadership built on unspoken lies. Dan shifted in his chair. Elise continued. Moreover, these relationships, hidden for years, weren't revealed during HR onboarding, weren't disclosed during conflict of interest training, and only surfaced when Natalie herself made them public during a company-hosted event. The courtroom stirred. The judge leaned forward slightly. The resulting fallout led to a breakdown of managerial trust, employee morale, and public reputation, impairing Mr. Kinley's ability to lead and justifying termination based on Section 3B of the company's ethics and loyalty clause. She flipped a page. Exhibit E, emails from internal staff asking whether the rumors were true and expressing concerns about workplace favoritism and deception. She set the papers down. Your Honor, this wasn't personal drama. This was an infection. Quiet. Prolonged. And when it was finally exposed, it jeopardized the very culture Mr. Kinley spent a decade building. Silence. Then the judge spoke. Anything further? Elise met his gaze directly. Only that betrayal, when it intersects with business, has consequences. The judge turned toward the defense. They scrambled. A half-hearted objection. Something about hearsay. The judge waved it off. I've heard enough, he said. He looked at me. Mr. Kinley, he said, you acted within your rights. This court finds that the terminations were lawful, based on breach of workplace ethics stemming from undisclosed past relationships, which directly compromised your professional judgment and business integrity. He turned to the defense. Case dismissed. The gavel hit. Gasped from the back row. Dan stood slowly, stunned. Tyler rubbed his face. Ben looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. And me? I just turned to Elise. I didn't say anything. I just stood and pulled her into a hug. She froze for half a second, then slowly brought her arms up and hugged me back. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even warm, really. It was relief. It was weight, finally, leaving my shoulders. Thank you, I said into her hair. When I pulled away, she nodded, eyes glossy but proud. I told you, she whispered. Fresh eyes. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe months. Not because I'd won, but because I wasn't alone in the fight. Not anymore. It was Friday evening when I heard the knock. Not the kind you get from a delivery guy or a neighbor needing sugar. It was slower, hesitant, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. I opened the door, and there she was. Natalie. No makeup. Hair tied back. Eyes red. Dressed like she hadn't changed all day. She held her phone in one hand, a tissue in the other. No suitcase. No dramatics. Just her, and whatever she still thought she could fix. I know I shouldn't be here, she said, voice shaky. But I didn't know how else to do this. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, eyes moving across the living room like she didn't recognize it anymore. Truth is, she probably didn't. I'd replaced the rug, moved the couch, donated the picture frames. How have you been? She asked, barely above a whisper. Better, I said honestly. She sat on the edge of the armchair, clutching the tissue like a lifeline. I heard about the court decision. Dan told someone, I guess. It's all over the office grapevine now. I nodded once. It's over. She looked up at me, and her voice cracked. Scott, I know I can't undo what I said that night. Or how I said it. And maybe I don't deserve it, but I need to say this anyway. I'm sorry. Her eyes filled again. I'm sorry for betraying you. For lying. For being careless with what we had. I stood across from her, quiet, letting it land. She sniffled. I didn't come here expecting you to take me back. I needed you to know. I do, I said, then reached behind me, pulled the envelope off the table, and handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Divorce papers. I forgave you, I said. A while ago, actually. She looked up, confused. Then why this? Because forgiveness isn't the same as staying. She blinked, stunned. I can't carry this around anymore. I continued. The questions. The what-ifs. The image of you laughing while I stood 5 feet away. I let it go. But that doesn't mean we can go back. She covered her mouth, the tears spilling now, heavy and uncontrolled. I never thought you'd actually. I knew you were angry, but I didn't think that I'd walk away. I said gently. I didn't think so either. But here we are. She looked down at the papers again. So that's it. That's peace, I said. She stood, unsteady, her voice barely there. I loved you. I know, I said. And maybe part of you still does. But love without loyalty? It's just decoration. She walked to the door, pausing once before opening it. Goodbye, Scott. I nodded. Goodbye, Nat. She stepped outside, and this time, I didn't watch her go. I just exhaled. It didn't feel like the end of something painful. It felt like the start of something clean. A few days slipped by without drama. No more lawyers. No phone calls. No visitors. I finally had a weekend with nothing to fix and no one to confront. I spent Saturday morning reading on the porch, barefoot, coffee in hand. The sun was out, but not in a bragging way. Just warm enough to remind me I was still here. Still whole. That's when my phone buzzed. Elise Ward. The name alone made me sit a little straighter. Now that you're not my client, coffee? No emojis. No winks. Just a single sentence, clean and brave, just like her. I stared at the screen, and for a second, I didn't move. Not because I was unsure, but because for the first time in a long time, something small and good was growing again. Quiet, but real. I smiled, couldn't help it. Then I typed, sure. I know a place. Best coffee in Austin. Just don't try to impress me with more whiteboard strategy. I hit send. The breeze outside shifted, ruffling the edge of the newspaper beside me. A small gust carried one of the pages off the table. I didn't chase it. Let it go. Some things were worth letting the wind carry away. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Life will throw spokes into your wheels. Sharp ones. Sudden ones. You'll fall hard. You'll bleed on pavement you used to dance on. But it's not to hurt you. It's to remind you that the ride isn't over. It just means you need a new bike. Maybe a different route. Maybe a better one. And maybe, just maybe, someone new to ride alongside. That was the end of the story. I still think about the moment Natalie stood in my driveway, begging Luke not to take her, sobbing like the truth was too heavy to carry, but he didn't flinch. He said, "Let's go," and drove her away anyway. So I've got to ask, did he do the right thing? Or would you have stayed out of it if it were your sister? Tell me in the comments. And if this story hit you somewhere real, go ahead and like the video, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got more stories coming.